guys, I'm Abbe Lewis, a singer-songwriter and vlogger from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about 5 things I learned living outside the US for 15 years. But before we get started, if you like this kind of content, you like to hear original songs, covers, and vlog-style content, then hit that like button and feel free to subscribe so that you can get notifications every time I put out a new video. The topic is, I lived outside the US for 15 years. I just moved back with my family to the States. I lived in Hungary, traveled all over Europe, have traveled to South Africa, to the UK. When I first started traveling, I was 15, went on a mission trip to Mexico. That kind of like opened up the world for me a little bit. At 19, I moved to Hungary. I pretty quickly started to realize that there were things that, or maybe perspectives that I had as an American that were possibly false, or that people didn't all agree on, or I just had kind of like a different view of the world or of my own country and Americans than the rest of the world did. So I wanted to talk about 5 things that I personally learned living outside the US that I thought might be useful or helpful or broaden the perspective of people who are interested in this content. So the first thing I learned living outside the US for 15 years is that not everyone has a good opinion about Americans. I grew up being told, like everybody else, that America is the greatest country in the world. Everyone wants to be here. It's dangerous everywhere else. This is the safest country. This is where everybody wants to come and live and be. There's no reason to move anywhere else. There's not even really any reason to travel anywhere else. This is your country. You need to stay here. This is the best of the best. This is as good as it gets. I heard this my entire life up until the point that I left the US. And going to Europe, I discovered that not everybody thinks that way about us or about America. So that was really shocking. So some of the stereotypes that we have in the world that are negative outside of our own country are, for example, that we're uneducated, that we're rich and spoiled, that we're naive about the rest of the world, which unfortunately is pretty true for a lot of people. There's just so many things, and so many people don't like us, actually. And we're told our entire lives that everybody loves America, everyone wants to go there, but it's actually not true. Yes, there are plenty of people who do love America, who do want to be there, who think that it's better than where they are because they have bought into Hollywood and the propaganda of the American dream and all these different things. The reason I say propaganda is not because there are not true things about this country and how great it is. There are certain aspects of it that you won't be able to find anywhere else, and I'll talk about that in a little bit so that we end on a positive note. But I thought this would be kind of a good, honest video for people who are, new to the idea of traveling or are curious about what other people might think about us and want to hear from someone who has lived somewhere else. So when I went outside the US, really for a long period of time for the first time, I was 19 years old and I went to Bible college in Hungary, which was a great experience. I learned a lot about myself, my relationship with God. I learned a lot about the world, and I'm really grateful for that experience. But there were some really difficult things about it as well. For example, I found myself being asked all the time how many houses my family owns, how wealthy I am, do I know where this country or that country is, and people just in general kind of being skeptical of me even being really a good person, having any depth to myself as an individual. They just assumed, I'm a shallow, spoiled, rich American who knows nothing about the world. And that was a huge slap in the face and really hard to deal with. I had never experienced being someone who actually is discriminated against because in the States, I'm not in a position in American society either where I would be very discriminated against. So it was really difficult at first to have that reality hit me that, hey, not everyone's gonna like you, and it's simply for the fact that you are from America. So that was really kind of a big shock. So that's the first thing I learned, is not everyone likes us. The second thing I want to mention that I learned that I felt was very, very important was that stereotypes, although they are stereotypes for a reason, they're not always true, and they're not true about everyone. I grew up in the States hearing stereotypes my entire life about African Americans, about Mexicans, about Middle Eastern people, about Indians, about so many different people groups, hearing all these stereotypes and hearing a negative connotation behind them. And when I started to get out and travel and be in a more international community, I realized that, these stereotypes may be true for a reason, and there are people they are true about, but your average person just wanting to live their life and do good deeds and be a good person are not going to have these stereotypes be true about them. One big one that, after September 11th, everyone was afraid of anyone that looked like they're from the Middle East, and was like, I remember being taught basically as a child that I need to avoid anyone that looks like that because everyone was scared, and there's a reason that these stereotypes came about and that people were scared. I'm not going to downplay the fact that it was a huge tragedy what happened, and that it was really like life-changing and earth-shattering for this entire country and the world. But your average person living in Afghanistan, living in Iraq, living in any of these countries, they are just your average innocent bystander who wants to live their life in a way that they are caring for the people around them, being a good person, being a good member of their society, and are really genuinely amazing and great people. I found myself being really angry that I've been told my entire life these blanket statements about different nationalities and people groups that is just not true for the general public. It's true for those outlying groups that are the loudest, terrorist groups or fundamentalist groups, but it's not true about your average person. And it's the same in the US. We have so many stereotypes that people believe about us that are not true for your average person. For example, that everyone owns multiple houses. I personally can count on maybe 3 fingers. I might know 3 or 4 people who have multiple houses. And maybe whoever's watching this video, you grew up in a different community and everyone around you has multiple houses. But my point is, that's not the point. The point is that not everyone's the same. We're all different. We have our own unique experiences. And the simple fact that we're from a particular country is not going to decide who we are as a person or how we live necessarily. So stereotypes not being true about everyone, that was a really, really important lesson that I learned traveling and having my eyes opened and meeting people from different cultures, learning a new language, all these different things that was really, really life-changing for me, that I'm really grateful for. And I'm so grateful that I could receive the education of just being in different situations, being in the world in a different way, not always being surrounded by my own culture. And even within the States, that can be true. I'm from the South, so Southern culture can be very different from Northern culture, even within the States. So even if you're going to travel within the States, you don't even have to leave the country. You can learn so much from other people. And if you just get outside the box of the community you grew up in, there's so much that you can learn and gain from that. The third thing I learned, and this might offend a few people, America is not the best country in the world. America is a really great country. It's a really great place. It is way better than a lot of other places that people could live, but it is not the best country in the world. Not everyone has the same values. Not everyone has the same priorities. Not everyone's priority is to live the American dream, as hard as it may be for some people to believe. But not everybody has the ambitions that you see Americans having like their own business or having a massive house, or there are so many things that, come together to create this picture of the American dream. That's not everybody's ambition. That's not important for everyone. And there are plenty of other countries where the standard of living is really incredible, and some places even better than the US, where people might have a bit different mindset about life and what's important. And for them, it's not the best idea in the world to move to America. America is not the best country in the world. And I grew up learning and being told that America is the best country in the world. There's nowhere else to be, not only because of the wealth we have, but also because it's the safest country, which is absolutely untrue. Our country is really actually, compared to a lot of European countries, for example, really unsafe. Europe is extremely safe. I could walk around in the middle of the night as a young woman in Budapest, in Hungary, and not feel threatened, not feel uncomfortable in most situations. Growing up in Nashville, for example, I remember if I was driving anywhere in the dark, I would be nervous. And I was inside my car with the doors locked. But I always had that in the back of my mind, that what if somebody tries to get in my car? What if I meet someone with a gun? I shouldn't be alone, and I never felt that way in Hungary. I never felt that way in most of Western Europe. Eastern Europe may be a bit different story. I did feel a bit unsafe there. But my point is that there are plenty of places that are actually safer than the US, and really wealthy countries, really lots of opportunity there. So America, in the sense of the material sense of the wealth you can gain and the standard of living, is not necessarily the best country in the world. I will say, though, and I will get to this later in more detail, that our mindset does make us better than a lot of places. The fourth thing I learned is that, to be honest, as a culture, we are pretty materialistic compared to a lot of other cultures and a lot of other places in the world. Even the countries that have a really high standard of living and would be considered wealthy countries, because our mindset is much different than a lot of other places. We were raised to believe that acquiring things, acquiring wealth, acquiring material items kind of like gives a bigger sense of self-worth to us. And if you don't have that, that's a sign that you didn't do well enough in life, because we have a very materialistic idea. Also, we have a very consumer-driven society where we're told that we can't be happy without owning certain things, that, that owning more and more things will make us happy. And that's not a mindset that's taught everywhere. So, for example, in countries like Denmark, in countries like Finland, these northern Scandinavian kind of countries, they're very wealthy countries. They have a really great salary. They probably own property. They probably have a lot of benefits for living in the country they live in. But their mindset is not the same as Americans in the sense of wealth determining your self-worth. I'm sure there are circles like that everywhere you go. As a big generalization, it's not the mindset of the culture. The mindset of the culture is that you kind of blend in with everybody else, because it comes from a more socialist idea and a more the idea of humanity in and of itself and the collective good being more important than you individually. Because in America, we're really individualistic. We were kind of raised to think about, what can I do personally? How can I improve my own life? How can I succeed personally? And in a lot of these countries over in Europe, it's more about the collective good of society, because there's a history of that being taught and that being endorsed as an idea, that we don't stand out and we look at the common good. And so it's not important for everybody. And that's something that I see about Americans that's a very American thing, is that we really, really care about building wealth materially. We care about our individual success. We care about going after our dreams, all of this kind of stuff, more so than in other places because of our mindset. And that brings me to my fifth point, which is that I learned why America is actually a great country. So I don't want to end this on a negative note of just bashing America. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. I love my country, but here's why. It's not because it's the best country in the world to live in. It's not because it's the most materially wealthy. It's not because it's the safest, because that also is absolutely untrue. It's because as an identity, as a national mindset, Americans are all about freedom, they're all about following your dreams, and they're all about the fact and the idea that anything is possible. And for me, that's a very special thing that I really appreciate about where I grew up and how I was raised and the culture that I live in. Now, again, after 15 years, we just moved back a couple months ago, is that here, when you tell someone an idea you have, they don't look at you like you're crazy. They actually go, oh, wow, that sounds amazing. Go for it. It's like anything is possible. And it's such a huge country that you have so many options of where you can live, where you can go, what kind of things you can do. So in a sense, there is this overall sense of freedom, even if technically, materially, it's not more free or more wealthy. but the mindset, because people are open-minded and they have that mindset that you can achieve something that might be a bit outside the box, or you can achieve something that sounds difficult or impossible, it feels like, wow, I feel free. I feel like people, believe in me. They want to encourage me. And that's an amazing feeling. So I will say that is something I'm happy about, living in the US again now that I'm surrounded by people with that mindset, and that's actually really cool. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. If you like this kind of content, then again, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also put out original music and covers if you want to go check those out. If you missed it, I put out an a cappella version of O Come, O Come Emmanuel over Christmas, so check that out at the end of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!